All right, welcome everybody to the February edition of Garden Hour. My name is Amanda Bachmann. I'm the SDSU Extension Pesticide Education and Urban Entomology Field Specialist based in the Pierre Regional Center. And joining me tonight, we have quite the crew. We're going to cover a lot of material for a winter garden hour. So I'm very excited to see everybody and hear what you're going to be talking about. So we've got Prairey Walkling, who is our Extension Master Gardener Coordinator based in Rapid City. Prairey, what are you going to be covering tonight?
I am going to talk about the Master Gardener training.
Awesome. And you have a Master Gardener here with you as well. Debi Urey-Crosby is also joining us. Welcome, Debi. I won't put you on the spot. I'm assuming you're going to be talking about the Master Gardener program.
Right.
And where are you based out of?
I live in Brandon, so I'm a member of the Minnehaha Club in Sioux Falls.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us on Garden Hour. And we also have Robin Buterbaugh, who is our Extension Horticulture Field Specialist, also based in Sioux Falls and Brookings. Robin, welcome. What are you going to be covering this evening?
Well, I'm just going to be giving a brief introduction to myself and talking a little bit about what I'm going to be working on with Extension.
Awesome. It's so great to have you on an off-season garden hour before the full season gets into swing in May. So this is good practice. And we also have Dr. Maddie Shires, our Extension Plant Pathology State Specialist, who's based on campus in Brookings. Maddie, what are you covering this evening for us?
Tonight I'm going to talk about some rose diseases that people can be looking for as their plants start waking up here in a couple of months.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you to our audience. I see we've got about 50 attendees hanging out. So keep an eye on the chat for some links and information that our presenters are going to be posting. And if you have a question, feel free to use that Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and I will pose those questions to our panelists at the end of their segments or at the end of the hour. So with that, we're going to kick it off with Prairey and Debi.
All right. Thanks, Amanda. All right. So good evening, everyone. As was already introduced, my name is Prairey Walkling. I'm a Master Gardener Field Specialist based in Rapid City. And we have a special guest tonight, Debi Urey-Crosby. And she already told you that she's a Minnehaha Master Gardener, and she is also the chair of our statewide advisory council. And Debi's going to share a bit about her journey and her experiences as a Master Gardener. So welcome, Debi. And we're excited to announce that registration is open for the 2024 Master Gardener and Home Horticulture Training, and I'm going to share more about that. But first, I always like to begin with our mission, which is to provide current research-based consumer horticulture information and education to the citizens of South Dakota through Master Gardener projects and services. My agenda tonight is to tell you about the course. We're going to talk with Debi, share some Master Gardener Club events that are coming up, and a few 2023 highlights from our program. So some of you might be wondering, what is a Master Gardener? And above all, Master Gardener is a volunteer. These individuals have completed an in-depth course on many aspects of horticulture and passed an exam. And then after that, they serve as boots on the ground for SDSU horticulture and provide research-based information out in their home communities. Here's some information about the course. It's a hybrid course. Most of the sessions are online on Thursday evenings, and we have 2 in-person sessions. So you have a choice this year. You can travel to Aberdeen, Madison, or Rapid City. The deadline to register will be March 10th, and information about the process and those 3 different options can be found on our SDSU Extension website, and I did put that link in the chat. So the training topics are quite varied, and they're listed here We have excellent trainers, including Amanda, your host tonight. Amanda trains on invertebrate and vertebrate pests, as well as understanding pesticides and integrated pest management. And now, for those of you who might be thinking about becoming a master gardener, we have our special guest, Debi, who is going to help you learn more about our program. So, Debi, how did you get started in gardening?
So my dad was in the Air Force, which meant we moved around a lot, but it seemed like no matter where we moved, my mom had a garden, and I just got used to seeing things grow. I didn't originally like tomatoes, and I didn't like the smell of tomato plants, but I think over the years I've gotten used to them, and now I look forward to the smell in the summer.
It's funny you mentioned that smell because it's so distinct. And I read that the tomato foliage smell is thought to be part of the plant's defenses against pests and diseases, which is pretty fascinating and something that you might explore more with Dr. Rhoda Burrow's portion of the Master Gardener training, which teaches about fruits and vegetables. So how long have you been a Master Gardener, and can you tell us a bit more about the program and why you think this is a good opportunity for people to get involved in?
Sure. So I've been a master gardener. It'll be 20 years this summer since I took the program. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it has. I originally took the classes because we moved here from California, and I could not figure out how you would grow a garden in someplace so cold and someplace that had such a short growing season. So a friend of mine recommended the classes for me. I kind of looked into them and decided to take the course. And I think the best part about taking the course is there are so many aspects that you learn about. Some of them you feel like maybe initially you're not interested in, but important things like pest management, soil health, propagation. A big thing for me would be planting trees correctly. And hopefully John Ball never makes a site visit to my house, because my early trees before Master Gardener training looks like a telephone pole stuck in the ground. So I learned a lot that first year of Master Gardener training. We also have a mentor program. So if a Master Gardener or a person is worried about getting in their volunteer hours, our mentor program really helps guide you towards the activities and community projects that each club has. So we have a big variety, and I would say check with your local club and see what is of interest to you.
Yeah, thank you. And some of our Master Gardeners have a special niche. Cindy Jungman is known for her succulents. Perry Johnson's known for apple trees and making maple syrup. Jean Grody is known for herbs. And you, Debi, are known for presenting about winter sowing and seed saving. And why do you encourage these methods and why do you like to teach on those topics?
Well, I think that growing and the winter sowing was kind of my way to get my hands in the soil when it's cold outside and you just have that itch to do something garden-wise. It's a really quick and easy way with the seeds in the jug. You plant them, toss them out into the cold, leave them until spring. So it's kind of a plant and forget sort of process. Then when the spring comes, your plants have already hardened off in the environment. So it's a much easier transition to just scoop them out, plant them in the garden, and be done with it. It's much faster. It's definitely a money saver and a time saver doing it that way. You don't need all the equipment for indoor seeding. Not that that's bad, but it's just another option. And then the seed saving is a good method for saving your own seed for varieties, whether it's vegetables or flowers or whatever that you really enjoy and like. They can also develop kind of a microclimate to where you've grown them so that makes it a little bit more successful in your area. And it just saves money in the end on having to buy new seed every year too. So those are probably my two favorite methods.
Yeah, I'd say many of us are interested in saving money, and those garden center bills add up fast. I haven't tried winter sowing yet, but it's not too late, right? I could still do it this year. So,
Yeah.
And you can tell us about your winter sowing. You're going to do a winter sowing workshop, right?
Right. I'm presenting a winter workshop at the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum here in Sioux Falls, and it's February 24th. I believe it's $10 for the class, and it'll be part lecture, so I'll explain the whole process, but it will definitely be a demonstration, and they'll plant a jug or two on their own and take them home to sit outside until springtime.
Very cool. So sometimes I hear people that are considering the Master Gardener course, but they're just kind of on the fence about if they have enough time to volunteer, enough time to do this program. What would you say to those people?
I think it's the kind of thing that if you really want to do it, you'll figure out a way to do it. And the clubs really help to make it as streamlined as possible. Many clubs are doing hybrid, a combination of Zoom meetings and in-person meetings. There's a big variety as far as making up your 40 hours of volunteer work that's required. You're given 2 years as soon as you finish your training. So that really is a substantial amount of time. But even after that, with the mentor program, we help get the participants signed up to what committees look really fun and interesting. All the clubs have a variety of maybe a seed library. They do presentations at libraries. They might do a presentation at a school. We have garden tours that we do as well. Minnehaha and a lot of the other clubs have spring events that come up, and all of those count to continuing ed and or volunteer hours, depending on the actual event that you participate in. So I think it's definitely workable.
Yeah, I like to tell people it works out to be about 2 hours per month to reach those 40 hours, which really isn't too bad when you think about it. And we do have opportunities that people can do from home, like some opportunities like manage a club Facebook page or help write articles. So there are some of those opportunities available.
Right.
So another thing Master Gardeners do is help beginning gardeners and even experienced gardeners with their gardening questions or give them tips to be more successful. So what advice would you give to a first-time gardener in South Dakota?
Well, if they decided, my first recommendation would definitely be to take the training. However, if for whatever reason they decided not to take the training, I would really encourage them to check out SDSU's extension website. There is the Garden and Yard newsletter that they can subscribe to. They do have access to submit questions to the horticulture staff at SDSU as well. And again, if they don't want to join a Master Gardener area or club, I would contact the club that's in their area to find out when and what type of events they have. Many of the clubs also have newsletters that has garden information too. So a lot of that would definitely be helpful information.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us anything about your photos here?
Sure. So, a lot of these are some of examples of what we've done. If you look to the left, the first one on the left is what we at Minnehaha have. It's called Masters in the Garden, and it's kind of a spur of the moment event where a master gardener volunteers to have gardeners at their house. It's free of charge. It's open to the community. And we just do a variety of things, maybe demonstrate in this instance, how to divide plants and where to move them. The two directly below, the one to the left with the garden boxes was another example of Masters in the Garden. And that was a great event just to look at her different processes of how she planted different crops. She had a lot of different methods and a lot of interplanting of her crops. Then the next to the right of that, the other smaller one, is a picture of our plant sale that we do. And that's a huge event for Minnehaha County. It's a Saturday, and I would say within a couple hours, all the plants are gone. They're plants that we either start on our own or we share with Southeast Technical, and also that we dig up in various yards. So that's another way too to get volunteer hours and get that exposure. The far right bottom picture is one of our community projects that we do at the Arboretum. And we have a couple programs where we do summer type camps for kids in gardening. Really gets them exposed to what gardening is and talks about all aspects of planting, harvesting, a little bit of bug control and bug information. So really to get those gardeners started at a young age. And then speaking of gardening at a young age, the other two pictures with the little guy is my grandson. So the one with him sitting on the ground is planting garlic, and I figured that's a great way to do it. He was barely 2. And then last year, planting carrots, which is his favorite. He doesn't like tomatoes, but he likes carrots. So that was a great way, again, to continue. You can do it for your own family or do it for the community for getting kids involved.
And what are you planting here? Tulips or?
Yes. So
Yeah.
those are tulips. I volunteered at Macquarie Gardens this spring, or I'm sorry, in the fall, to plant tulips. And we planted a lot of tulips. And it happened to be a little warmer that day, but we planted tulips in about 4 different spots. And it was a great way to just really get those in. Again, that's volunteer hours. So that was something that was fun and different. Getting my grandson to handle bugs. I am not very good with worms, even though I'm a gardener. Just it's a little creeps me out a little bit. So I'm trying to get him started so he doesn't end up with my fear. The other pictures, those are some peonies out of my garden. That's one of the things I was excited about growing in South Dakota that I couldn't do in California. Then the picture with the tree is John Ball. This was an advanced course, one of the many that SDSU Extension offers, and that was pruning and taking care of apple trees. So we went to Master Gardener's orchard where he has many apple trees, and we just cut away and pruned away. I spent the afternoon doing it.
Oh.
The bottom picture is a community project at one of our elementary schools. And it's a gardening program that the teachers help teach with during school and combine it with academic learning. And then we help the kids learn gardening skills. And at the end of summer, have a harvest, kind of a harvest festival and products for the families.
Yeah, so such a variety there, working with kids, planting tulips, pop-up garden events for the public. There's just such a variety that your club and all the clubs do. So thank you so much for sharing all that with us. And last question, what's your favorite thing about being a Master Gardener?
I think my favorite thing really, as much as I love the learning and teaching to others, I really love learning other Master Gardener skills from other Master Gardeners. So whether it's a new gardener or a seasoned Master Gardener, there's always a different way to learn something different, or maybe be a little more adventurous and try a different crop that I might not have thought of doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, just last night we were talking about honeyberries and climbing zucchini, and
Right.
there's always something new to try, right? Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Debbie. And next, I'm going to share a couple of the public gardening events that our clubs are offering around the state. So in Aberdeen, they have a spring plant sale coming up in May and a garden walk coming up in June. And we'll share all these events too on our SDSU Extension Master Gardeners Facebook page. In Rapid City, Gardening in the Black Hills is sold out, but this event is still open, Spring Fever, and we'll have our own Dr. Christine Lang will be speaking, and David Lott from UNL, and those are some of their topics they're going to speak on. In Yankton, we have our Missouri Valley Club, and they partner with the Yankton Seed Library. This event is tonight, so but they will have a series. They'll have more classes too. So check out the Yankton Seed Library for those classes, and you come to a class and you get to get free seeds, and a lot of them are native plants. In Watertown, they have Ready, Set, Grow coming up, and Robin, who's on tonight, is going to be speaking on square foot gardening, and Dr. John Ball on trees. So great event for Watertown. In Minnehaha, there's a few tickets left, I think, but they're getting close to sold out, I think, as well. Gardening with the Masters spring event, and that's March 23rd. And one of their speakers is Meg McAndrews Cowden, who wrote this book, Plant, Grow, Harvest, Repeat, about succession planting. So some of you have maybe heard of that book. And in Miller, they have their Spring Fling coming up in April 6th. And again, we have Dr. Christine Lang, Sydney Trio is going to speak, and Tanya Flegel. And just quickly, some 2023 impact. We have 300 plus active master gardeners, about 15 clubs. We did 68 educational events, reached nearly 5,000 South Dakotans last year. And a shout out to Missouri Valley, they donated over 6,000 pounds of produce to their community. And we had our update conference every year. We get together as Master Gardeners. This year it was hosted by the Northern Hills Master Gardeners and Spearfish. We had 127 Master Gardeners attend that event, and these are the Gold Star Award winners. And you can see Debbie there. We also did a trip this year. We called it Christmas in Peru. It wasn't quite Christmas, but it was in December. And their purpose was to learn and observe different horticultural practices internationally and experience different cultures around plants. And so there was a couple horticultural students, and it was led by Dr. John Ball and Sydney Trio, and then Master Gardeners, and then they could bring a guest with them. We had our 2023 training. We trained 89 individuals. 69 were new interns, and the others were either current Master Gardeners or non-volunteers. This is the group, our group in Hot Springs. And so we got to be outside. It's a lot of fun. And it's just a quote from Sue White from our Northern Hills Club about why another reason you might want to become a Master Gardener. And there is my information, how to reach me, and happy to talk with you more about the training or anything else related to Master Gardeners. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Prairey and Debbie. And if folks have questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A. Doesn't look like we have any right now, but we're going to move on to Dr. Maddie Shires. So Maddie, you're up next.
Prairey, could you stop sharing screen? Or maybe I can. Okay, cool.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. All right. Okay, here we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maddie Shires, and I am going to be talking about some rose diseases and some rose insects. For those of you who don't know my background, which is probably a lot of you, I worked on rose diseases for my PhD. So roses kind of hold a special place in my heart, even though I work on row crops now. I also serve as the director of our plant diagnostic clinic here on campus. So if you're having plant disease issues, we would be more than happy to work with you and try to get those issues diagnosed. So yeah, here we go. So these are just a few of the rose diseases that I'm going to talk about. This rose here is one of my favorite roses. It's from the variety called Bullseye. So the first one I'm going to start with is the most common rose disease, probably around the world, but definitely here in the country. It is called black spot. It is a fungal disease, and it's caused by a fungus called Diplocarpon rosea. The black spot symptoms, which I'll have on the next slide, are actually caused by the fungus growing and reproducing on the leaf. There are some risks with it, as the fungus can quickly get out of control and cause reduced vigor and plant defoliation at any point in the season. And here are just a few pictures of the black spot fungus, and you can hopefully kind of see that here. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but these are pretty advanced stages of the fungus. Yellowing that you can see on the leaves is actually where that leaf is starting to senesce and it will defoliate off the plant. So that is one of the big risks with this fungus, if it's out of control, is that it does cause defoliation and it will cause reduced vigor. If it's a problem throughout the plant's life, it can actually cause plant death too. But it would take several years of severe defoliation. Here's another example of that. You can kind of see it starting here. And here's another example on a knockout rose. Some people have knockouts up here. If you can't tell from my accent, I'm originally from the South, so my rose varieties are a little bit different. But even knockout roses can get black spot if environmental conditions are good. There are a few ways to prevent black spot, thankfully. Proper leaf dryness is going to be the most important way and easiest way to prevent black spot. The fungus can germinate on leaves whenever there is leaf wetness for 6 or more hours in a day. And it will take a few days of 6 or more hours, but it does happen pretty quickly. So one of the best ways to prevent that leaf wetness is to water in the morning and allow that drying to occur throughout the day. Watering at night is going to be one of the quickest ways, especially watering at night as we progress into the summer, is going to be one of the easiest and quickest ways to start seeing black spot problems. Another adjustment that can be made to prevent black spot is your watering style. So if you overhead water or sprinkler water, that water again is getting on those leaves and encouraging the fungus to germinate whenever we have that warm, humid weather. So switching to drip irrigation or something that does not wet the foliage will help a lot. There are some tolerant rose cultivars. Knockout is one of those that is touted to be black spot tolerant. However, as you can see, whenever the conditions are right, it will get black spot as well. Proper plant spacing can actually help a lot. So having a couple of feet of air movement around each rose will help reduce the disease and just also help with drying out the leaves. Another step that you can take is removal of problematic roses. An example of this is my mom actually had a lot of roses, and we kept having a lot of black spot issues, even though we had some spacing, good spacing, and we were taking care of the watering. And we removed the one rose that black spot seemed to start on every year, and we have almost no rose or no black spot issues now. So sometimes it could be worth removing one rose that's starting your problems, and it will help prevent most of the rest of your roses from having fungal issues. The next one I'm going to talk about is powdery mildew. Most of you have probably seen powdery mildew in some form on vegetables, on trees, on ornamentals. It is a fungal pathogen that grows white mycelia on the leaf surfaces. Powdery mildew can occur at any time of the year, but especially in warm weather, so that 70 to 90 degrees range with moderate to high humidity. All types of plants have varieties that are susceptible to infection by this pathogen. However, powdery mildew on cucumbers is slightly different from powdery mildew on roses. So just observing it in your garden doesn't mean that it's going to move from one plant to the other, but it is good to make note that it's occurring. So here are some pictures. So this rose on the left had a severe powdery mildew and a few other disease problems occurring, but all of the white growth that you see on those blooms and buds is powdery mildew. So this is an extreme case, but it can happen. The picture on the right is a more typical case of powdery mildew, where the powdery mildew is starting below the bud and kind of covering the whole stem and starting to cover up to the bud. There are ways, thankfully, to manage powdery mildew. There are some tolerant and resistant varieties to powdery mildew. Removal of infected leaves. If you catch it very early, you could trim off buds and blooms. You could also trim off leaves, and that will help keep a lot of the powdery mildew at bay. Pruning your plants when it's at the proper times to allow for better aeration. So that would be, if you have a really thick rose bush, pruning out some of the middle canes to kind of give it a more air both around and inside of the foliage. Similar to black spot, avoid watering the foliage because that does encourage fungal growth. There are some fungicides that can treat a really early infection, but a lot of times they're not cost effective, especially for roses, but there are some options out there. So now I'm just going to cover a few other common rose diseases that you may or may not see, knowing that some people are probably getting ready to buy roses, or you might have already put some maybe in a grow room or in a greenhouse. So this here is crown gall. It is a bacterial disease, thankfully. It's not dangerous to the rose, and you can actually just remove or prune that gall off. You could see a recurrence after removal, but again, it's not dangerous to the plant. Sooty mold. This can be a problem on your plants. However, it's caused by insect feeding. So many of you may know aphids. Aphids feed on sap, and they produce what we call honeydew, which is their frass. And sooty mold is a fungus that grows on that honeydew, that insect frass. So sooty mold is a problem that can pop up on roses, especially if they're greenhouse grown. So it's important to kind of keep an eye out. Sooty mold, there's not a treatment for it, but controlling insect issues can help prevent it. Another one that you might see on roses, especially in a greenhouse, are going to be mealybugs, and those are the little white cotton fluff balls that you can see on in this picture. They do very much enjoy feeding on roses in the greenhouse, and especially if it's really humid. So just keep an eye out for those. There are some treatments for them if you find them. Another really common rose pest that you might see in a greenhouse, and you can definitely see outdoors, is spider mites. This was kind of an extreme example, as you can hopefully kind of see the webbing on the flowers here. There are some insecticides that can be used for spider mites if it's a severe infection. However, outdoors, more than likely, you won't need to do too many applications, but if you are growing roses in a greenhouse or some other closed environment, that's where you'll need to control those spider mites. So the next couple of things I'm going to mention is viruses on roses. That's what I worked in throughout my PhD, so I enjoy getting to talk about these. The first one is rose mosaic virus complex. So whenever we say it's a complex disease, that means that there is a combination, usually of multiple viruses that cause the same symptom. So with rose mosaic virus complex, there's 3 different viruses. They all cause mosaic symptoms. And I'll show you examples of mosaic on the next few slides. What causes rose mosaic virus? You're going to see symptoms pop up when we have cooler temperatures. The viruses are spread through propagation and or through insect feeding. The viruses, again, they're going to show symptoms on plants in cooler weather, but the symptoms do decrease as our ambient temperature outside increases. So as we get warmer, you're not going to see as many symptoms. All varieties of roses are susceptible to these viruses. And here's some really fun examples. As a virologist, it's really fun to see the way that roses react to some viral infections. So this one here, you can see the mosaic and the modeling. Because these viruses aren't super harmful to the plant, it's kind of fun to see just the way that the leaves will turn from virus infection. Here's another one. This is, I believe this was apple mosaic virus. I can't remember. Anyways, it was one of the rose mosaic virus diseases. And then here's another one, and you can kind of see a variety of symptoms here. We also ended up with wavy leaves. They call this an oak leaf pattern, and that was because of the viruses. So there are a few ways to manage these viruses. Make sure you buy clean plants from a reputable source. There are no roses that are completely tolerant or resistant. Removal of heavily symptomatic plants. So if you are seeing these viral symptoms continue to reoccur and they seem to be spreading, it could be good to remove the plants that seem to be the most symptomatic to slow the bug spread of the viruses. And again, these viruses are not super damaging to plants, but they kind of do over time detract from the attractiveness of the plant. You might not have as many blooms or something like that. So it's always good to kind of get out there and scout your roses early in the season to know what's going on. The final one I'm going to talk about is rose rosette virus. You may or may not have heard of it. It's way more of a problem in the South. So if you have any friends that live pretty much Kansas or South, they've probably heard of this disease if they grow roses. So rose rosette disease is a viral disease caused by the rose rosette virus. The virus is spread through eriophyte mite feeding. So these are very, very tiny mites. They're half the size of a spider mite for some reference. This virus can also be spread through grafting and propagation, and it can also be spread through seed and root grafting. All roses are affected, from wild-grown roses to landscape roses to cut roses. So here's some examples of rose rosette. We can just see that this rose just looks ugly. The canes don't look right. The leaves are deformed. I have some closer up pictures, but this is typical to see in the South. And the reason I bring this virus up is it actually started in Manitoba, Canada. So it's probably in South Dakota, even if we don't observe it as often. So it is one to kind of keep an eye out, as it probably is harbored in the wild roses across the state. Here's some more examples. You can see what we call witch's broom, which is proliferation of shoots all kind of coming out of a center point. This is another witch's broom, and you can see just a large mass, a large ball almost coming off of the plant. Here's another example of a witch's broom, and you can kind of see the deformed spiky leaves. This is one of my favorite pictures. This was from a wild rose, and you can see that the canes are extremely pink. There's thousands of thorns on this cane, which is completely abnormal. The veins of the leaves were actually pink. So this was all symptoms of rose rosette, and it was one of my favorite pictures I took. Here's another example of rose rosette. Again, you can see the abnormally long and increased thorns up and down the branches, the abnormally pink leaves, and you can also kind of see a witch's broom starting with all of these canes, with all the canes kind of coming out of one center point. Here's some more examples. And yeah. And again, just this is a witch's broom. Hopefully you can kind of see that it's a large mass on that plant. And that again is very common for us to see in the South on roses. Here's a combination of black spot on the left and rose rosette on the right on the same plant. Now this picture here is actually a comparison. So on the left is rose rosette and on the right is new growth. You can see that the new growth is a red to maroon color. However, the leaves are normally shaped. They're a nice glossy color. And when you compare that to the left where the leaves are deformed, everything's pink, there's extra thorns. So it can be easy to confuse them if you've not seen them often. But I do want to point out that not just because you're seeing red growth on your plant does not mean it's rose rosette. It's more than likely new growth. Management of rose rosette, should you see it, please let me know. I would love to know. I still help with some of our tracking efforts across the country. Removal of symptomatic plants is the best way to manage the disease. There is no treatment for it. Diverse landscape plantings, no more than 50% of roses in your plantings will help reduce your chances for this disease and all rose diseases. And then just kind of keep your eye out, observe neighboring roses, observe wild-grown roses in your area. Look for these symptoms because they're fairly classic symptoms. And again, this is our SDSU plant diagnostic clinic. We can help you figure out what's wrong with your plant, and that's from anything from roses to vegetables to row crops to trees. We work closely with John Ball, and so we do some of the diagnostic services for him whenever he's needing help. We did move to a new space in May of 2023, and we've got new equipment, so we're very excited to serve you. And here's just one of my favorite roses. I believe Laughter. And that is everything I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Maddie. I think what I got from that is that there's like a million ways for a rose to die in the West.
There are.
Awesome. Well, if anyone has questions for Maddie, feel free to throw those in the Q&A. But right now we're going to move on to Robin. So Robin, I'll turn it over to you. Although I think, Maddie, we need you to stop sharing.
Yep, I'm working on that right. Okay. There we go.
All right, thank you, Amanda, and I'm happy to be here. I'll get started here. All right, so I am probably the newest member of the horticulture team here at SDSU Extension. I started just on January 2nd as a horticulture field specialist, and I'm just really super excited to be, talking about plants, working with people, everything to do with plant related stuff. So thank you very much. Here's my contact information. As Amanda said, I'm working both out of the Sioux Falls Regional Center a couple of days a week. And then I also have the opportunity to work out of McCrory Gardens when I'm in Brookings, also kind of a couple days a week. And those days are a little bit flexible depending on what types of events are going on. So those are the places that I can be reached. So I just completed my MS in Natural Resources Management just in December. So I worked with primarily native plants in community landscaping. So my project title was Integrating Native Plants in Community Landscaping. So I'm really passionate about that. I actually had the opportunity to work with the community, both with the City of Brookings and with the Agricultural Heritage Museum on 4 different ecological landscape design projects featuring native plants, as well as providing some different education and outreach as to why those native plants are really important in our landscaping. So the 4 projects that I worked on were at the Agricultural Heritage Museum, at the city sign that's at the Southbrook softball field here in Brookings, at the Brookings City County Government Building, and at the Dakota Nature Park. So here is some examples and pictures of what I have been working on. And these are all at kind of various stages of the planting process. So in the Ag Heritage Museum, I kind of redid all of the landscaping in front of the Agricultural Heritage Museum with the help of SDSU facilities, who did some terracing with giant boulders. We made a bioswale and then put all new native plant landscaping in that site. Down below the Ag Heritage Museum at the Dakota Nature Park, it looks a little rough now, but this is like at the very first moment of planting. And so that is functioning also as a bioretention basin. And so I'm working with the city on the management of that. On the top middle, the Brookings Southbrook sign has some patches because some of the plants were eaten by rabbits and had some issues with the drought due to the landscape rock that's there. So I've been doing a little bit of replanting there. And then probably my favorite and most fully grown project at this point is at the Brookings City Government Building. And that is also a bioretention basin featuring native plants. And also I worked with the landscape architecture program and graphic designers to make the sign that you see in front of there. And so the sign tells a little bit about what a bioretention basin is, how it functions, and then how plants are effective at helping to slow that water down, infiltrate it, and use it before it enters the storm system. So that's kind of what I was working on for my graduate project. However, I'm really excited to be working for Extension because it really lets me merge my love of native plants, kind of always been interested in protecting the environment, and also just general gardening into a focus on this ecological design. So with that, as I was doing my master's degree, and even before that, I was involved in a variety of different garden-related projects within the community. So as a Native Plant Initiative graduate assistant, I had the opportunity to work with the Dakota Prairey Elementary School here in Brookings to do native plantings all in the whole front of their school because they have bees that they started keeping. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a lot of native plants for those bees to provide nectar sources for. I've worked on some rain garden projects with Dr. John McMain here at Extension. I've also been a member of the Brookings Sustainability Council, and whether or not everybody was in favor of it, kind of worked with the No Mow May initiative last year, and it will be kind of continuing again. And I've just done some other landscaping projects within the community. That photo on the right is an example of that. And then one of my favorite projects, unfortunately, that was before COVID, and they kind of had to stop the garden club at the Boys and Girls Club. But I worked with the Boys and Girls Club and the South Dakota Local Foods Education Center on the Bee Great Garden. We had an annual vegetable garden and a perennial kind of like food forest garden at the Brookings Boys and Girls Club. So had a lot of fun working on all of these projects, getting my degree, and kind of all of that fits together into what I want to do here at Extension. So currently, and as I said, I just started, so I'm kind of just learning the ropes a little bit, but I'll be doing a couple, or actually a variety of different things here as an Extension horticulture field specialist, providing general horticulture support, just questions from the public. There's a lot of inquiries. People just have questions about various different landscaping things, from lawns to trees to native planting. I'll also continue to work with the Native Plant Initiative at SDSU on some of their native plant projects, their plant sales, and hoping to expand a lot of that native plant use in landscaping and pollinator gardens into our communities throughout the region. I'll also be supervising the garden hotline So each year we have a garden hotline staff that are present in 4 different regional locations. So there'll be a garden hotline staff personnel in Aberdeen, Rapid City, Pierre, and Sioux Falls. So from March through October, those staff members will be available to take calls. And in the off season, we have our horticulture assistant, Sydney Trio at McCrory Gardens, will be taking those calls. So I'll be working closely with them to make sure they're available and helping to serve their communities with any garden related questions. With my work with the Dakota Prairey and at the Boys and Girls Club, I'm really interested in working more with community, youth, and school gardens of various kinds. So I'm looking forward to partnering with, lots of different organizations in order to do that. And then also working with the master gardeners with Prairey and all of the projects that they're working on, and just going to be a resource for all of them. And so this slide is a little busy, but this was kind of like my big brainstorm mind map about kind of the things that I wanted to work on and how they all fit together into this idea of a community landscape ecology framework. So really, things like soil health, things like water conservation, habitat, native plants, all of those different kind of ecological design tools, and then apply those to gardens, whether it's for homeowners, whether it's for school gardens or community gardens, whether it's working with cities, municipalities on implementing more native plantings and ecological design to areas where, it's kind of just turf that they have to use a lot of resources in order to keep up with mowing and that sort of thing. And even businesses and other organizations to see how they can incorporate some native plants and ecological design practices to their landscaping in front of their buildings as well. So that's kind of a big picture goal. But right now I'm just kind of working with different inquiries of questions that people have, and then kind of just getting started with all of these different projects that people come to me with. So I'm excited to keep working on all of these things and look forward to having people reach out with projects and ideas that they've got. And there's my contact information again, my email. And again, I'm in the Sioux Falls Regional Center and McCrory Gardens. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you on the regular season of Garden Hour as we fill out that schedule too. So welcome to the team. And it's so great to have another sort of horticulture expert on board, especially with all the projects that you've got planned. So we are... Yes, I'm so excited about like the plant resources stuff. Like, oh man, just wait till you talk to the entomology team. We have projects.
Good.
But we are about at the top of our hour here, and I saw that we did have a question about winter sowing. So this one might be for both Robin and Debbie, but we've got a southeastern North Dakota master gardener. So figuring out sort of, so northwest or northeast, northeast South Dakota would be the closest sort of area. And they're interested in winter sowing. What plants do you sow this way? And any other information you can provide is appreciated.
Well, I know Debbie's going to be giving a workshop here in just a couple of weeks about winter sowing. I'll say from, and also I think we'll be having an extension publication coming out on winter sowing as well. But immediately, like the first thing that comes to mind for winter sowing for me is native plants. And so I know there's people that use a lot of different other seeds, but native plants are ones that usually need some sort of cold stratification before they germinate. And so winter sowing is actually ideal for native plants if you're interested in growing some of your own plants. I know that transplants of native plants can be a little bit hard to get to, and they're a little bit more expensive. But if you can buy seeds, you can kind of start experimenting with growing some of those on your own. But I'm sure Debbie has some more information about all the things that she winter sows as well.
Sure, I can add to that. Robin's correct. The native plants are really one of the biggest ones to do. I also did poppies. Poppies require that cold storage kind of setting for seeds for stratification. So I did poppies. I did echinacea. I did some things that typically a person doesn't think of cold planting in the winter like that, but I did tomato seeds. And if you think about it, when your tomatoes drop in the ground and you leave them, spring comes and all of a sudden you've got tomatoes that grew up out of nowhere. So it made sense to me, if they can last over the winter and I did nothing to them, then they can also do growing in the winter sowing. The hardest one, I would say, for our climates and definitely probably for North Dakota would be growing peppers, whether it's sweet peppers or hot peppers, that they just really take a longer time. They really need that warm soil and they definitely need the warm temperatures. So that's probably one of the hardest, but I did plant some this year, so we'll see what happens.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I can't wait to get some seeds started and this like warm weather we've been having. I know we're in like a winter storm warning or whatever for like the next 2 days. So this was our false spring, but it gave me hope for, the
Yeah,
gardening season.
Plant those jugs and stick them outside really quick.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, for all of our folks that are still online, thank you for hanging in there with us. Oh, it looks like we've got a question here from Maddie. Powdery mildew on peonies. They get powdery mildew, but long after blooming. Should they just cut them down after blooming as a control measure?
I do not know a ton about peonies. But as long as it's a okay time of year to be pruning those, that's what I don't know is the proper pruning time point for peonies. But if it's okay to prune those whenever you're starting to see powdery mildew, it would definitely be perfectly fine to do and would help reduce powdery mildew for the next year.
Awesome. Yeah. And also for folks, if if you want more details or you think of something afterwards, you can always drop any of us an email and we'll either answer or make sure that your question gets to the right spot. But we've got one more edition of the off-season garden hour coming up on April 2nd. And then after that, we will begin our regular season of garden hour in May. So keep an eye out in your emails and on the SDSU Extension website for information on how to register for the regular season. But we are going to wrap it up here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you to our panelists, Debi, Prairey, Robin, and Maddie, for hopping on this Tuesday evening. And hopefully everyone has a great rest of the winter. And I hope all of your spring gardening dreams come true. So we'll see you folks in April. Thanks so much.